This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Zia and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode. Thanks to the Dig Me Out Union at Patreon. You can help us make the next episode happen by joining at patreon.com/dig me out. Jay?
Yeah.
Let's
get into it.
We're back with another one of our patron selected episodes, and we have joining us again. It's been about a year. That's how these things work. 12 months is about a year. So about the same time.
How that works out?
It is weird. About the same time each year, people join us. And it was last March. And this episode is the first week of March. So see how that works. Time moves in a consistent manner, Jay. Which might also be the lyrics to one of the songs we're going to talk about.
Well, it's a flat circle.
Yes, thank you, Cole Rust or Russ Cole or whatever the character's name was. Josh Beller is back with us. Welcome back, Josh.
Hey, thank you very much for having me on again. And I was really excited to get to this one. This is going to be some pretty new territory for this podcast here.
I like it.
We like new territory.
New places we haven't explored.
Tell us and our listeners what your pick is and why you picked it.
Okay, well, my pick is probably it's the big breakout album, I would say, from Finnish metal band Nightwish, known as one of the pioneers in the subgenre known as symphonic metal. They released one album before Oceanborn, but it was basically just a demo, and even like the lead songwriter for the band has said it never should have been released. So he considers this like their real first album. And this was the one that really started to make them stars throughout Europe, and they eventually later on got them to a career that later on led to some surprisingly good chart success in the US as well much later. But this is where it really started. And that's part of why I picked it. It's the album that kind of started to make Nightwish a household name, and at least in their home country and elsewhere in Europe. And it's still most widely considered to be their best album even today.
I'm going to start out by saying I will not be pronouncing the name of any member of this band. It is impossible for me to do so, other than their current lead singer's name is Floor Jansen, which sounds like a hockey player for the Rangers in the 1980s. But other than that, I could not begin to pronounce anyone's name. I know they've gone through different lead singers. Floor is the current lead singer, but was not on the album we're reviewing. That was, I don't know.
I believe Tarja Tuonen, I believe that would be.
Sure. And yes. As you mentioned, they're from Finland. Kitee is the name of the city, or Kitee, or Kitee is the name of the city.
Yes.
They have how many? I was looking up their discography. So you mentioned the first album came out in '97. That's the one that you said was primarily demos,
yes.
or sort of like a. I think I read it that it was more like folk oriented.
Yes. That's all, and also their one single from that album was a song about Jesus. So it's really out of place with their later work.
Gotcha. And they've overall released 8 albums. The most recent one was Endless Forms, Most Beautiful in 2015.
Yes.
They've been pretty consistent every 2 to 3 years. Looks like had an album out, except for there was a break, 2007 to 2011. There was a longer break, but fairly consistent. And from what I've read of the numbers regarding sales, like one of the more successful artists in Finnish history. I think they're like third in total sales for a musical entity in Finland, and they're in the Finnish Music Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Oh, I actually wasn't aware of that part.
Yes.
Is Hanoi Rocks before or after them?
I don't know, but there's
It's the only other Finnish rock band I know.
so they became members of the Finnish Music Hall of Fame in 2018. Actually, last October. They're only the 11th member, so that's a pretty small hall. I mean, that's literally like a hallway. That's not like a full building worth of, busts like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I wonder if that's like a just sort of a lobby. I don't know what's going on there. You need to add a few more people. I think Hanoi Rocks maybe.
Hanoi Rocks is number 1. Michael Monroe is number 2, and then Nightwish is number 3. I'm kidding.
I believed you. Oh, it's being built in the Mall of Tripla, and it's going to be open in the fall of 2019. And it doesn't list who else is in there.
But I assume that means they'll probably have at least a few more people by then. By the time it opens, I would hope.
I hope so. But okay. Well, that's interesting that they've. Oh wait, there's a Wikipedia.
I was
It's
looking
in
at
Finnish.
that too, but I didn't see anything about who's in it.
Let's get back on track here.
Yep.
We did get some comments, a few. It was just the Scott block just chimed in with their comments, Jay. Scott Witt.
Are they back on the same team again, or now are they?
Well, sort of. So Scott Witt said, never could get into them because of the keyboards. They're definitely an important band, huge overseas. We'll get into this, some of the stuff with the band in terms of the sound and instrumentation. And then Scott Witt, who I'm not sure when he posted. It might have been late at night. He did not care for the cover artwork. I won't go into all the specific details, but he took him 3 posts to express his displeasure with the album artwork. So, which is definitely, I'll say, unique is a word. I don't know if it's representative of the sound or like representative of, I don't know. It's got a lot going on.
There's a lot of symbolism there.
Yeah.
I was looking at it, and my wife walked by, and she was like staring at it for a second. She's like, "Is there a wolf inside of the lizard's eye? That's an ocean." I was like, I don't know. I think it's just the Earth.
Oh, I didn't.
But like every level, every layer of it, it's like there's like another thing inside a thing inside a. It's like a Russian doll.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be like just a general thing with the planets. Like that's a theme that we'll probably discuss later, but it shows up in their music in this album.
So how did you come across them initially?
Oh, this is going to be quite a story. So, believe it or not, I actually learned about Nightwish probably in like somewhere around the early 2000s, 2003 or so. Learned about it via the internet, and specifically through my involvement in tournaments for fighting games like Street Fighter and Tekken and that kind of stuff. Like, because around that time, that like 2003, 2004 period, where a lot of you started seeing like people who make videos of the games, like videos of like, combos and stuff. And they used a lot of Nightwish in these videos, and it just kind of got really popular within this community from there. And that's where I first discovered them, and it just blew me away. The very first song of theirs I ever heard was not on this album. It's one from a bit later album, but it just blew me away that I didn't know there was anything that could sound like this. Just the idea, because we'll just get this out of the way now. So the main idea of this band is it's kind of like what I mentioned symphonic metal earlier. So it's meant to be like they use oftentimes synths or sometimes an actual orchestra, which they would use later on. But they combine that with the heavy guitars, the metal sound, and a legit like female opera singer. So it's put all that together. It just blew my mind when I heard this, and I just immediately got on the internet to learn more, and I ended up buying like all of their albums at the time. And actually, I even went to see them live in 2007, I believe.
Where?
In Cleveland. That was, I believe it was Peabody's they played.
Oh, wow.
Wow, cool. And I assume it looks like there's a lot of people in the band, so is everything live? Is there any tracks, or is it all pretty much performed?
It's all performed live, except for the only thing that would be on a track would be some of the stuff on their later albums that had a live orchestra.
Okay.
That makes sense. I mean, it's hard to replicate that even with like a good synthesizer.
Right.
All right, let's get into this record. Jay, tell me one thing you liked about Oceanborn by Nightwish.
Well, I've got some familiarity with these types of bands, I guess. I don't know. I haven't gone deep into symphonic metal, but I definitely was a Dream Theater fan early on, which this band has elements of in terms of the progressive kind of epic rock sound. I go through like cycles, and maybe like every 5 years I'll deep dive in some subgenre of like more of like a power metal kind of theme. I don't like Cookie Monster vocals, so I like melodic stuff that has a lot of power. So like a band I got into for a while was called, I think they're called Tyr, Tyr. They're like a Viking metal band, and I had my Dragon Force era. So like I go through eras of like these subgenres of power metal. So some of this was familiar to me. I think what I liked about it, or was at least most intrigued by, was the use of the opera singer. So you'll hear a lot of bands maybe refer to generically as having an operatic singer. Mm-hmm. You might hear like a Bruce Dickinson and refer to that way. This is really an opera singer. Like it's a totally different thing. The way they sing is just unique, and you don't hear it very much in any kind of pop music in the broadest term application. So to be able to bring that in is definitely out of the gate sets this band apart from a lot of the other stuff that I'm would be familiar with. So even though some of the runs, they'll do like the double kick runs with like the locked up melodies between the guitars and the keyboards that are really intricate. That's kind of a Dream Theater theme. You'll hear some like classic Rainbow, Deep Purple-esque kind of guitar riffs here and there. Like there's a lot of familiar elements that you hear other bands do, but for me, it's the vocal on the record that is really sets it apart. And it's just interesting to hear how it's able to fit in with the mix, because it's a difficult. I mean, opera singers are supposed to, I think, and in practice, fill a lot of space. So it's interesting to hear with this much going on, like how they can separate the vocal out so you can actually appreciate it. It doesn't kind of just become a mud of sounds. And I'll say the same thing for the orchestral elements, whether they be synth or real strings or whatever's going on there. A lot of bands that have done that, say Metallica, or when you get those symphonic albums, they kind of just sound like a little muddy, like everything melds together and you just get one big chord. You don't really hear like all the different instruments, and you kind of lose the whole point of an orchestra. On this, everything's very separated, which is really hard to do. I mean, with the amount of layering and tracks, I mean, sometimes the vocals are doubled, sometimes the guitars are doubled. You got all kinds of keys going on. You got a flute that comes in and out. Like you got a lot of stuff going on, but it's remarkably like discernible and layered in terms of like separated. So, I mean, from that standpoint too, I mean, you get the big power of the symphonic sound, but you can kind of break it down and understand every element that's adding up to it. So, I appreciate that, coming in from kind of having some metal background, to be able to hear all this come together in a really unique way and then be able to dissect it. So those were some of the things I thought were unique about the record that I enjoyed.
I'll say, aside from pinpointing certain things, I spending a lot of time with this record, as I mentioned to Josh before the show, because I was traveling, so it was with me on my inner ear monitors for multiple days, for multiple hours. I just put it on a loop. Wow. I just like the ambition of it. Like, it's so over the top compared to what I normally listen to that, you know, hearing these, like you mentioned, like the double kick and this very orchestrated, you know, string sections, and whether they're real or keyboard, and then this, you know, amazing singer over top of it that I have no frame of reference to. I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go along for the ride. Like, this is like insane. Like, it sounded crazy to me, but like it also made sense. Like, I could understand song structure, but when I was listening to it, I was like, this sounds like I'm listening to like classical music in the way that things are phrased, and in the way that you know, what, you know, progressions are being played. Like, I could, if I played this for someone who was into, like, you know, who really knew classical music, they could probably be like, well, that was influenced by this, you know, symphony, or this was influenced by, you know, this, you know, piece, or what have you, because I can hear like that level of musicianship in the songwriting. But to like, I didn't really understand what was going on. Like, I don't understand how you even come up with the idea of like putting this all together. Like, it seems so ambitious to the point where it'd be like you just give up. Like, and yet they pull it off in a way that, like, they have songs that make sense from a, I don't want to say pop because that's not the right word, but they're rock songs at their core in ways that are, you know, verses and choruses and that kind of stuff. And I can understand them in that respect, but then there's also this insane layer of musicianship on top of everything, from everybody. It's not just that she's an opera singer; it's everybody is, you know, and at the top of their game. That you know, it just kind of is mind-boggling. So, yeah, I just dug it from a overall presentation and you know, what the whole vibe was to the whole record.
I want to hit on a note that you were talking about there in terms of, you know, this might be the kind of thing where, you know, a lot of people are going to look at it and be like, oh, that's not my kind of music. I find this to be like, there are moments where cranking this kind of thing is just a lot of fun, and it just fits. Like, if you're trying to crank on some work, or like you just need something that's just high energy and kind of just epic and over the top, like you were saying, like every now and then, and you just kind of set aside like all your preconceptions and whatever, and you just go with it, and it can be a lot of fun, you know. So, you know, these are, I'm familiar with this kind of stuff, like I said, but even if you're not, it just can be a lot of fun to crank a band like this and just go through a record. And, you know, when you're driving, or it's probably great to play video games too, you know, that kind of thing. So I would definitely say it can be occasion music for some people who maybe normally not open to this kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point, because in the same way that when I listen to, like, you know, Brian Eno or Harold Budd or whatever ambient music to like set a particular mood for like when I'm writing or something like that. I had this on earlier this week. I got a Lego kit because my daughter's really into Legos right now. So I got a Lego kit for the Tron, the Tron sequel that has the 2 light cycles, and it has one bad guy character and then the male and female character, and they each have swords. And we had this playing, and we were like having sword fights and like doing all these things with the light cycles, like racing them around the table. I'm like, this is awesome.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And you probably got the Legos together in about 2.5 minutes with this on.
Well, I also worked to it, and it was like I was speeding through those expense reports. Like
that's what I'm saying. It's like a shot of speed.
It is. It's very dramatic, and I'll joking aside, like I could if I don't like to write to music that has vocals because I get a little distracted, but like there are enough parts in here where I could put one of these songs on. I think one of the songs is mostly instrumental. That would be like a great song to write if I needed like a high energy, an action scene I was writing or something like that for like a fiction piece. I would totally put that on like that. That's like when I do that previously, I would put on like say the Mad Max Fury Road soundtrack is a really good one to write to if you're like want to get amped to write something. This would be like perfect music, which I don't want to sell this as like, I mean, yeah, this is like metal and it's over the top, but there's also like a diversity to it. I think it's track 6, Swanheart. It shows off a different side to the band that's, more, I don't want to say gentle, but it's, really, you can really focus in on the vocal on that song. And Josh, you had mentioned in your email about the bonus track, Sleeping Sun. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel like that's probably best as a bonus track because this does sort of that, Swanheart does that sort of thing, but better, I think, in terms of being a quieter song that builds. So
yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
So what immediately like worked for you when you heard this?
Just right from the very opening notes of the first song, that's still one of my Stargazers. That's still one of my favorite songs in the album, and it just hits you right away. Like it tells you what you're going to be in for, and it's just going to be a shock for you if you're not familiar with this kind of music. Like just hits you right away with that, and you're just into it the rest of the way. Like that song is just it's a really good encapsulation of I think what Nightwish was about. And on top of that, just some of the really so I can answer somewhat some of the questions you had regarding the instrumentation. So most of it was via synths, and that's Thomas, the band's songwriter, he's also the keyboard player, so that's him on that stuff. But they do have for this album they had a real small orchestra that is credited on the album. So
okay. And
yeah, but it's mostly synth. But I think given that, I think I'm really impressed at how they do manage to make it sound not too cheesy most of the time anyway, and it gets that orchestral sound there. And I just I'm a sucker for those big over the top operatic vocal sections, which again Stargazers has one of those at a certain point. Some of the other songs do. Devil in the Deep Dark Ocean has that, and so that kind of thing I just love that, like, over the top those operatic vocal sections. It's one of my favorite things with this band.
So how is this? So is this a record you listen to regularly?
Not as much anymore. I used to listen to this and all Nightwish's other stuff like all the time. They're a band that's I've kind of fallen out of favor with me over time to some degree, but like this is probably the one album of theirs that I will still put in from time to time.
So how is it aged for you when you put this on now compared to when you first heard it? What are any changes in your opinions?
Definitely definitely yes. Now that I'm not overwhelmed by just the novelty of the whole concept here, which I definitely was when I was first listening to them. Now I can actually like focus on individual elements of the songs because, as you mentioned, there's a whole lot going on here, and it can be kind of hard to isolate one or two things, and your first few times listening to this. But I can do that now, and I would say mainly it's like a lot of the lyrics are what, just with Nightwish in general, what does not age well with me, and part of why I'm not as big a fan of them these days. Just some of those we get some of those weird, awkward turns of phrase that can kill the mood for me at times, and that can show up in their music. It's like, I guess that's why, nowadays when I go back and listen, the track that you mentioned, the one song you mentioned that was an instrumental is my favorite off this album.
Okay.
But
Moon Dance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jay, I wanted to...
There's a little bit of a pirate song theme to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one of those songs where I was like, is this a cover from a musical? Like, is this the Pirates of Penzance? What? I didn't know. But, it's funny because, joking about that, they do have, like, legit, like, metal cred. Like, when I think of, like, a song like Passion in the Opera that has that riff.
Yeah.
I mean, that you're like, okay, these guys are legit, like, into metal. Like,
yeah, that's a Zakk Wylde style kind of guitar riff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, I could totally hear that on an Ozzy album from, the 90s or the 80s or something like that, or 90s. Yep.
Yeah, Sacrament of Wilderness is another one that I mentioned along with that as kind of similar too, in that regard, as like letting you know, yeah, like this is a metal band.
So Jay,
yeah,
what doesn't work for you on this record?
Well, I mean, the vocal can be a hit and a miss. I think it makes it unique. I question sometimes why it needs to be doubled, or there's an extra harmony. Sometimes it almost gets in the way of the melody, and just that style of singing, I'm so not used to it. Just the register and the technique. Can sometimes, for me, being a pop music fan, it makes it difficult to understand what the melody is and really get into the song because it's just so distant and above the music. In a way, like dynamically, that's what makes it kind of work because it's able to separate, but also the separation sometimes and just the technique make it hard to like get a hold of the songs all the time.
Sure.
They're a little bit fleeting, like pulling me in to really find the melodies and the hooks and get into the theme and not be stepping away and analyzing it. I think that's one of the things I struggled with. The keyboards are hit and miss, you know. They are borderline cheesy at times. There's other times where like they really just commit to it and it kind of works. It's the way keyboards work sometimes is like you just got to go all in and you can pull it off. I tend to like obviously the kind of the weirder use of keyboards. Like the Riddler has a really cool keyboard sound and melody in there that almost gets into more of a Blue Oyster Cult kind of feel that I dig. You know, it has some darkness to it. It's a little bit more of a vintagey kind of synth sound that I like. I'm not a big fan of the orchestra hit sound. I just think of like the Yamaha keyboard you get and you start playing with the patches and you're like stink stink stink. You hit the symphony hits, you're like, oh, that's so cool when you just do that for an hour. Every time I hear those, that's all I can think of, and they pull those out here and there, and those are a little distracting, and I don't know, don't quite work as well. You know, I do like the song structures. They're not too long. I mean, with this kind of music, you're in for longer songs. I mean, that's kind of the idea.
Yeah. Although it is, I mean, it's not terribly long in terms of these could have been 8-minute long songs, and they keep them pretty reined in for this style.
Right. So, in general, I'm okay with the song structure. I wish some of the choruses were just much more melodic and hooky. It really just pay them off. You know what I mean? It'd be so great if I guess the melodies were as epic as the sound is sometimes, you know? And that's something I think that like a band like, for me, like Dream Theater's been able to crack, because they can write a pretty good hooky chorus, which a lot of these bands kind of struggle with, that are more on the progressive metal or power metal or some kind of, you know, subgenre of metal that's more major chord melodic, but, you know, technical. So I would love to hear some more work on choruses here that really just take it to the whole other level, you know, bring all that epicness together into just a soaring chorus that you're singing along to all the time. That doesn't necessarily happen. So, I mean, those are some of the things that I think didn't work for me and I struggled with a little bit.
Gotcha. I only really had two things that bugged me. One, I didn't like when the guy sang.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
It's so out of place and awkward. The other thing I didn't care for, and you mentioning the major chord usage is probably why, is I didn't love the use of piano because it's so bright.
Yeah.
That it like it stands out so much when it is used. More so than the synths, even, to me, whether they're the orchestra hits or the pads or what have you. The piano, because it's playing in these like major scale runs, a lot of the times it's just like this. It's just really above in terms of the frequencies, like just it's above everything else, and it becomes the focus of whatever is going on at that point. And that was the one thing that I wish was dialed back a little bit, because it also then like reminded me of, you know, Trans-Siberian Orchestra and like Christmas and stuff. So
it gets a little like schmaltzy Broadway kind of off Broadway thing.
Yeah,
Phantom of the Opera or something.
Yeah, but I didn't, you know, with her vocal, because it's in that operatic style where it's not as melody driven in the choruses. I can understand, especially with this being like their first like real album, that they hadn't quite nailed that down yet. Now I know that the next singer is not quite the same in terms of, I don't think she's from what I read, is a like an opera singer in the same way. She was described more as a pop singer.
Yeah, definitely she was not an opera singer at all.
So did the choruses and the hooks become a little more prevalent going forward?
Yes, for sure. I could even point you to some specific songs from the later albums, but the hooky choruses they definitely became more of a thing on their later albums.
What's weird is like I can totally hear in this band and in this record from 1998 like where metal was going to go in a lot of ways in the early 2000s. Yeah. With, you mentioned it in your email, Evanescence. Like I can hear Evanescence sort of distilling some sounds out of this band, and some of the more aggressively not quite symphonic but getting close there metal of the 2000s that I didn't really know where that was all coming from, so it was kind of weird. But I'm guessing that bands like Nightwish probably played some part in that. So you're a little more dialed into the metal scene than I am, Jay. So I'm sure you're more familiar with, those sounds.
I think this definitely sounds ahead of its time. It's hard to believe this is a 1998 record. When you listen to it, it sounds like maybe 5 to 10 years after that. So
like I said, it was in 2003 when I first heard the band, and even that time, it was like nothing I'd ever heard before, and it just amazed me. So I think that's definitely right on the money there.
So do you find that there are deficiencies in this record that were maybe smoothed out or improved upon in later albums as the band further developed, Josh?
Like I said, the main one is, like I said, as I mentioned earlier, getting more hooks into the choruses. That's definitely something that became more prominent later on. Even just their very next album after this had a huge hit single that's like just a fantastic sing-along chorus. Wishmaster. I would say other than that, what you mentioned about the piano sound being bright and all that, that's something that, again, I do think that that is a part that I would say improved over time, particularly with as they got more into the mid-2000s and onward, they started leaning more and more heavily on the full real orchestras. So that probably addresses a lot of that.
I think that they mentioned, if you go to Wikipedia, there's a quote from Tuomas. He says that we were all such amateurs when it came to recording. We didn't really know what we were doing, so we were just experimenting with a lot of different things. We even brought in this string trio who were complete shit, then another violin, then another violin on top. So we ended up with Moondance having 20 tracks of violin just because we hadn't done this before and didn't know what we were doing. It's a pretty stuffed album, but I also think it's one of our best because you can hear the excitement of trying all these new things. It seems strange that this became the breakthrough album because back at the time, the music was so funny. It's really operatic, and when you look at the pictures, they look pretty horrific. So it sounds like it was him and one of the other guys who actually produced the record. So I can understand, like, these guys are clearly proficient musicians, but when you have to produce yourself, that's always tricky. And this is a tricky sound to produce, especially with this being like your full-fledged record, or your first full-fledged record.
Yeah.
That's
yeah, I can definitely tell you none of their records after this were self-produced. So
that makes sense. So this didn't even come out in the US as far as I can tell. It has label releases in obviously in Finland, and then also in all of Europe, and then Japan. But there's no U.S. label listed unless it got through like some sort of, you know, weird distribution that's not. How did you get it?
Okay, so because it actually did get a U.S. release, but not at first. That's the case with all their albums from around this time, like their first 3 albums or so. Because again, once we got into that 2003 period, then their records were you could actually find them in, you know, your local record store, or even Best Buy or Exchange or what have you. Because Century Media released all their stuff up to that point in 2001, I believe, in the U.S.
Oh, okay. And that was a Sony, or well, it is now. It was bought by Sony in the 2010s.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was this was released in the US but not until 2001.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at the credits on Tidal, which is actually really nice because it puts full album credits and info with every album. The labels listed for it, the 2008 re-released are Fontana Universal, Fontana, and Spine Farm.
Yeah, there are 5 different versions of this record. There's the original one, then there's a 1990 reissue with the bonus track Sleeping Sun. There's a Japanese version, which has the song Night Quest. Then there's the limited European tour edition, which has the 2 songs plus a Return to Sea, and then the 2007 Spine Farm release, which then includes the live tracks Sleeping Sun, Swanheart, and the Pharaoh Sails to Orion. So... And then I'm assuming is there a vinyl reissue 180 gram in the last couple years of this, or is that still on the way?
Nope, it happened in 2015.
There you go. So now 6 different versions of this album. It's hilarious. There'll probably be a cassette day, double cassette of this, or I guess you could do it on a TDK 120. You could probably, or a Maxell 120. You could get it all on there.
God.
All right. Let's talk about overall ratings on this record. Worthy album, better EP, decent single. Jay, where do you fall?
I'm at an EP. I like, let's see, Sacrament of Wilderness, Passion in the Opera, Swanheart, The Riddler, Walking in the Air. I think it's my favorite song on the record. It's got those Vinny Appice style drums. If you're into the later or middle era Black Sabbath, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. So I think it's a really powerful EP. If you're not up for this kind of thing, a full record can be exhausting. There's a lot of information to take in. So
right.
I think it's a good 6-song EP kind of album, or kind of whatever thing.
Musically for me, it's an album. I wish that whatever guy's singing, it wasn't singing on like the ones he's like on Devil in the Deep Dark Ocean and a couple other ones. Yeah. It works for me as a record. I mean, I like all the music sans the piano, so it's fun and it's wild. It's just wild. Like I listen to it, I'm like, what is going on? What is going on? This is insane. Who did this? And I go start looking up YouTube videos, and I'm like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
So I just enjoyed it from that aspect. That I was just like, I had no concept of what this was going to be going in, and just came away like I was like the dude in the holding onto the chair like with his ears blown back, like like what? So where the album for me, Josh? Where are you at?
Yes.
Where the album better EP?
So I'm kind of torn on this because honestly, I'm not so big on the ballads in general with this band. That's a rule with me. Although Walking in the Air is fantastic and up there. It's close to my favorite song off this, so that one's great. But I feel like it's still probably overall more of a worthy album for me than an EP. There's like a couple tracks on here I could live without, but I'm cool with all the rest. Even like again, like you mentioned, the guy wishing the guy didn't sing. That's another thing that it got better as time went on. They got a better male singer eventually. Still not great in my opinion, but better than this. And Pharaoh Sails to Orion would be a fucking amazing. Sorry, I'm not gonna the amazing song without the male singer bit there, especially like that intro after his bit is just that's what I think of when I think of symphonic metal. That riff there. There's just so many, like, there's a lot of great moments on this album, and it can be uneven at times, but overall there's well enough good outweighing the bad to say a worthy album for me.
Okay. Yeah, when like the double kick and the really high vocal and the Pharaoh Sails to Orion starts, I'm like, let's go. Where are we going? Launch the spaceships.
You gotta for the Game of Thrones premiere this season, you gotta listen to a good hour of this before to get ready.
Perfect. Josh, thanks so much for coming back and sharing this record with us. We have broken our symphonic metal cherry on this record. So, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me on again. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it as much as you did. So, yeah, we'll maybe see some more of this kind of stuff on here in the future. There's some other recommendations from the 90s I could possibly pull up. There's stuff even that came a little bit before this that was along somewhat similar lines. But yeah, I'm glad you liked it.
Awesome. Want to remind everyone, patreon.com/digmeout is where you go to join us, join the union. You can get our cool stickers that Jay has designed, and at various levels you can vote for our roundtables, for our 80s episodes, and everyone gets to vote for our album review episodes, and anyone can submit. So, hey, Josh, if you want to throw in another one of those suggestions just for the heck of it into our suggestion hopper, feel free.
That I just may do. Thank you.
I can be like Josh and just skip ahead in line and pick a record.
There you go. And if you like what you heard, please consider leaving us some positive feedback over at iTunes. So for Jay, I'm Tim. We're out, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.
Thanks for listening. To support the podcast, visit www.patreon.com/digmeout and become a monthly subscriber at www.digmeoutpodcast.com, where you can find links to our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, as well as our merchandise store at Zazzle.com.